What if the same trade routes that built the ancient world were the exact same routes that quietly ended it? For centuries, merchants, silk, spices and gold moved freely between China, Persia and Rome along a network of roads stretching thousands of miles. And along with all of that wealth, something else was travelling too. Something no merchant could see, and no army could stop. This is the real forgotten reason the ancient world collapsed into the Dark Ages. By the height of the Roman Empire, the Silk Road wasn't just one road, it was a sprawling network of trade routes connecting China, India, Persia and the Mediterranean world into a single, interconnected economy. Goods that started in a Chinese workshop could end up on a senator's back in Rome, thousands of miles away, having passed through dozens of hands along the way. Here's the number that shows just how connected the ancient world actually was. Silk from China has been found in Roman burial sites, and Roman glassware has been unearthed as far away as Korea. Two civilizations that never even knew each other's rulers' names were already tied together economically, centuries before anyone called it globalization. It wasn't just silk. Spices from India, glass from Rome, paper and gunpowder ingredients from China, horses from Central Asia, all of it moving constantly along the same narrow network of roads and ports, funneling through the same handful of cities every single trip. That connection built empires. It also set a trap none of them saw coming. Trade doesn't just move goods, it moves everything that travels with them, including whatever is living inside the people, the animals, and the grain shipments carrying them. Historians believe the culprit hitched a ride the same way it always has throughout history. Fleas living on rats, living inside the grain ships and caravans that kept the ancient world fed and wealthy. Every shipment of goods was also, unknowingly, a shipment of exactly what an empire needed least. In 541 AD, a disease appeared in Egypt that would come to be called the Plague of Justinian, after the Byzantine Emperor ruling at the time. Modern research on ancient DNA has traced its origins back towards Central Asia, the exact same corridor of trade routes that connected the Silk Road to the Mediterranean world. The plague didn't spread slowly, village by village. It moved at the speed of trade itself, jumping along shipping lanes and caravan routes into the busiest, most connected cities in the world, because those cities were exactly the places built to receive goods, and unknowingly, disease from thousands of miles away. Constantinople, the wealthiest and most connected city on earth at the time, was hit first and hit hardest. Some ancient sources claim the city was losing thousands of people a day at the outbreak's peak. Modern historians debate the exact numbers, but even conservative estimates suggest the Byzantine Empire may have lost somewhere between a quarter and half of its entire population within just a few years. The most connected empire on the planet had just been handed the bill for being the most connected empire on the planet. And it didn't stop at Constantinople's walls. Following the same trade and shipping routes that had built the ancient economy, the plague spread outward into Italy, Gaul, Spain and North Africa within just a few years of first appearing in Egypt. Entire regions that had never even heard of the outbreak found it arriving on the next merchant ship or grain shipment long before any warning could travel ahead of it. Here's what made this so much worse than just a health crisis. The Byzantine Empire wasn't just a country. It was the last major surviving piece of the old Roman world, the empire actively trying to reclaim and rebuild Rome's former territory when the plague hit. Emperor Justinian had been in the middle of a massive campaign to reunify the fractured Roman Empire, reconquering huge swaths of Italy and North Africa. The plague didn't just kill civilians, and it gutted his armies, drained his treasury, and stopped the reconquest of the old Roman world dead in its tracks. The last real chance to hold the ancient world together didn't fail because of a rival empire. It failed because trade routes had already connected everyone tightly enough for one disease to reach everyone at once. And this wasn't a single outbreak that came and went. Modern research shows this same plague kept resurfacing in waves for roughly 200 years after its first appearance, meaning entire generations grew up never knowing a world without the constant threat of it returning, striking populations that had barely begun recovering from the last wave. With the Byzantine economy and the military crippled, the ripple effects spread outward along the same trade networks that had caused the collapse in the first place. Trade that once moved constantly between east and west slowed to a fraction of what it had been. Cities that depended on that trade for wealth and food began shrinking. Populations that had grown around busy, connected trade hubs collapsed along with the trade itself. This is the part most people never learn. Historians increasingly point to this exact period, the mid-500s AD, as the true beginning of what gets called the Dark Ages, not the traditional date of Rome's fall nearly a century earlier. The infrastructure, trade and population needed to sustain the old world didn't collapse in a single dramatic invasion. It was already being hollowed out from a disease that arrived by caravan. Literacy rates fell, cities shrank or were abandoned entirely. Trade that once connected continents narrowed down to small, isolated regional pockets, because the routes and the populations on both ends of them had been devastated. With long-distance trade no longer reliable, entire regions had no choice but to turn inward. Local lords and landowners became the only stable source of protection and food for people who could no longer count on goods or safety arriving from far away. Many historians argue this exact shift, away from connected trade empires and towards small, isolated, self-sufficient estates, laid the groundwork for the feudal system that would come to define medieval Europe for the next several centuries. The very thing that made the ancient world advanced and interconnected turned out to be the exact mechanism that unravelled it. The Silk Road did not disappear after this. Trade slowly recovered over the following centuries. But the world it reconnected was a smaller, more fractured, more cautious one. It would take hundreds of years before global trade ever moved as freely, or as confidently, as it had before one disease proved exactly how dangerous that freedom could be, and centuries later the same corridor would do it again. When the Black Death devastated Europe in the 1300s, it followed almost the exact same Central Asian trade routes the Plague of Justinian had travelled. That was proof that the danger was never a single outbreak. It was the routes themselves. An empire so connected it could move silk from China to Rome in months. It was undone by the exact same routes, carrying something far smaller than silk. If the ancient world could be brought down by something this invisible, what do you think that says about how connected our own world is today? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for the next episode where we uncover the empire that collapsed without a single battle.